The role of government in public policy and economic influence has always been an area of great debate, but it's something that a lot of people don't know much about, even though their taxpayer dollars are directly affected. This video talks about two major schools of economic thought and how they've influenced public policy over the past 100 years. Let's rewind to the beginning of the 20th century. At this time, private enterprise reigned supreme. The field of economics was abstract at best, and policymakers rarely interfered with business. The Roaring Twenties exhibited hedonism and excess at their extremes, and it looked like the lack of government involvement was a successful strategy. After all, everything was going up, things were great. But of course, the hedonism in the Roaring Twenties led to the crash of 1929 and subsequently the Great Depression. Around the country, banks failed and companies collapsed. Unemployment also started to rise and led to a major downward economic spiral. For years, it seemed like nothing in the private sector could shake this. Things just kept deflating. But it was around this time that the policies of one economist were gaining increased momentum. This economist was John Maynard Keynes. Keynes argued that in a severe recession, private sectors and consumers would not be able to break the downward cycle on their own. Therefore, it was the government's job to spend money in the form of an economic stimulus. This would pump up the economy. It was the only way to reverse things. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president at the time, was a great advocate of the Keynesian theory, and he used it as the economic framework for his New Deal program. Eventually, we recovered from the Depression. However, Keynesian economics continued to persist. For several decades afterwards, the government continued spending money, taking out deficits, pouring money into the economy. And for a long time, everything looked good. The economy kept growing through the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But in the early 1970s, cracks once again began to appear. As it turns out, there is a downside to government spending, the dangerous threat of inflation. As inflation destroyed people's purchasing power, the economy started to slow down. The 70s were the worst economic period since the Great Depression, and it was around this time that the monetarist school of economics, a more conservative way of thinking, started regaining its popularity. The monetarist school believed that we should control the money supply to encourage business growth. It's favored by a lot of famous economists, guys like Milton Friedman and Alan Greenspan. The general belief is that the government's main responsibility is to reduce spending and lower taxes, because this will help businesses to grow. The election of Ronald Reagan was the start of a new monetarist age. Debt became cheaper and cheaper, and businesses started growing quickly. This led to several boom periods, including the financial boom of the 80s, the dot-com boom of the late 90s, and the real estate boom and credit boom, of course, of the past decade. But as always, good things come to an end, and policy goes in cycles. With the current credit crisis, popular sentiment has once again shifted back to the Keynesian model. Let's have the government help us out. More spending. Let's bail us out of this mess. Now, is this a good thing? Well, it's up for debate. But the Obama stimulus package is very similar to FDR's New Deal in a lot of ways. It's pouring money into the economy by a number of public programs to create jobs and get people to start spending money again. Everything in policy is up for debate, but the big takeaway here is that policy is cyclical. There isn't any one solution for any given time. Any policy can create problems, and any policy can help solve those problems as well. But timing is really everything. So I hope this video has helped you understand a little bit about different types of policy and how they can affect the economy. And more importantly, where are your taxpayers going? Your taxpayer dollars going? Thank you very much for watching, and for similar videos I recommend you check out my website, www.canjo.com.